Sound, Mind, and Body is supported by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/inbound.
I'm a single mom now, and I have two boys that will, for the rest of their life, require 24/7 care. And I always get emotional talking about it. And, you know, they're the most beautiful teachers, because what they've taught me by me having to persevere through so much suffering and not lose my faith and my conviction that there's purposeful good in everything that happens, even the most tragic, horrible things, you know, that we live through in life.
Yeah.
There is purposeful good in it because we're in Earth School, or it's all illusion, really. I mean, we're just playing out our particular part in this lifetime. And I have learned through being with them how to be moment to moment and how to be more flexible, how to be more patient, how to not have expectation.
Hello and welcome to Sound, Mind, and Body, a podcast where we interview inspiring people about the many different ways to stay healthy, balanced, and well of mind, body, and spirit in today's crazy world with a dash of woo-woo. I'm your host, Sheila Melody, and today we have a very special guest, another extraordinary woman I met through Andrea Quinn's group, Tamara Mark. Tamara is an accomplished Broadway actress and dancer who started her career touring with the first international company of A Chorus Line and has worked with the top theatrical directors and producers, including Bob Fosse, George Abbott, and Hal Prince. And as if that can be topped, she was handpicked by Sidney Poitier to be one of the leads in his dance film, Fast Forward. And that's how she ended up in Los Angeles, where she ultimately left her thriving acting career to go on a spiritual journey around the world. But Tamara's true spiritual journey began when she became the mother of two severely autistic boys. She is one of the bravest, strongest, and kindest souls I have ever had the pleasure of meeting, and it makes me cry to have you here. Welcome to the podcast, Tamara.
Oh my God. Thank you so much. You're making me cry.
I didn't think I'd need my Kleenex this soon.
Oh my God. It's such an honor.
But you are. You really move me.
Oh, thank you. You move me too. Thank you.
And it's such a blessing to know you.
Thank you. I feel the same about you. And I remember meeting you in Andrea's room, because it was a room of very powerful women.
Yes.
Beautifully light-filled women, but powerful. And I just remembered you were just so radiant, so loving, so kind, so open to everybody, so willing to, want to uplift and help everyone in the room and be supportive. And I really am grateful to know you and be here today. So
I feel like you're describing you because I felt like I was so shy and kind of closed off. And, I've come a long way since then. It's been like 2 years.
This is incredible because this was your snippet.
It was. When I was in the group, it was in 2016 when Tamara and I were in this group with Andrea. And one of it's called a snippet, which is like a visualization of what you want to create. And it was this podcast. And I did not end up starting it until about a year later, but, look where we are. Now, today we are actually celebrating our 1 year of podcasting.
Wow, congratulations.
I know, thank you, Tim.
And it's a new moon.
Oh, yes. So we're going into the next realm of this, and we're going to take it to new dimensions.
Love it.
And you're starting that with us,
Thank
Tamara.
you. Thank you both.
So let's get to your incredible story. You grew up in Portland, Oregon, and you were telling us that you got cast in A Chorus Line, and that was the start of launching you into this life. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's an interesting story because I'd been a dancer all my life, and I'd always sung. But my passion was dance. So I went all over the country as a kid. I had dance scholarships from the time I was 9. went to San Francisco and with the Houston Ballet, with the San Francisco Ballet, with Harkness Ballet. And my friends talked me into going to an open call for a chorus line, but I said, well, it's a publicity hype. I mean, they're just trying to get people to come to the show. And so I begrudgingly went. But, they said, well, if anybody's going to get the job, it's going to be you. And so I went, and they had us do what they do every time, is do a tap, do a time step, and do a double pirouette. And then they did their first set of cuts. And then they showed you some of the opening number, the Hope I Get It number. They taught some of the choreography. And then if you proceeded to the next cut and the next cut, then pretty soon you're reading lines, and then they had you doing different parts, and they had you sing. But the thing that was so funny about me was I kept telling them, I go, I'm a dancer. I don't sing and I don't act. And the truth is that I did sing and act because they had me do the lines, and I had to sing and I had to act.
Oh
but
my gosh.
I had just really focused on my dance at that part of my life. So 2 weeks later, I'm sitting at the pool in my backyard, and my boyfriend, the phone rings, and I go and answer the phone. These people come on the line and say, I'm so-and-so, I'm the company manager for a chorus line, and I'm calling. And she read down, like, you have 5 days to get blah, 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 and you've got to have this and go that, and they're going to fly you to New York for wardrobe and costume and shoe fittings, and then we're going to fly you to your first city, and the international company is going to be in Vancouver, British Columbia. Okay, what do you say about that? You're going to be paid blah, 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 and I'm like reeling. I'm thinking, come on. I go, who is this? I go, somebody is playing with me.
Oh my gosh.
And she goes, Tamara, I'm very serious. This is who I say I am, and we want to know your answers. So I said, hang on a minute. And I put the phone down, and I yelled outside to my boyfriend at the time, and I said, I just got this call. They're on the line right now, and they're saying I've got to do this in 5 days and blah, 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 blah. And I go, what do I do? And he goes, say yes now. You can always say no later. So that's literally how it happened. I have Dennis Higgs to thank for that, because I probably would have not done it.
You're kidding.
Yeah, I think I just didn't understand.
Well, I want to thank your ex-boyfriend for doing that.
Yeah. And, then I was off to, into my life of theater, and, it was
so
exciting.
Then that took you to New York and doing all these other incredible theatrical. Right, you lived in New York for a while.
Yes,
then?
I actually left a chorus line after a year and went to. I fell in love with a guy, and I went to San Francisco and lived with him in Sausalito, and then it turned out he was a drug dealer. I have a recurring theme, but anyway, I ended up after that episode going to Oregon, back up to Oregon, because I had to leave him. And I was invited to a company class for Dance Theater of Harlem. They were in town, and I had started dancing again just for myself. And so Arthur Mitchell comes up to me. He was the head of Dance Theater of Harlem, and he goes, what are you doing here in Oregon? Why aren't you in New York? He goes, I'd take you into my company right now, but they're not going to accept a white dancer into an all-black company at this time. And this was, 1979. So I walk out from the thing, from the company class at the Civic Auditorium, and Mount St. Helens had blown. Oh. And the ash was falling out of the sky. And the words out of my mouth were, I've got to get out of here. I don't want to die like I did in the buried city of Pompeii.
What?
It literally just flew out of my mouth. And
Did you even know about the city of Pompeii?
No, I didn't. So I went home that night, and I told my parents I got to go to New York.
Oh my God!
And 6 weeks later, I went to an open call for Bob Fosse's dance, and he handpicked me. And that's a whole other audition story, because I was the worst. I didn't know anything about auditioning. So it's in a book called The Pursuit of Acting. My audition for Bob Fosse made the beginning story of a book.
It did?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, we'll have to look that up for sure. That's awesome.
My friend Stara Andrews wrote it.
So I want to go back to this city of Pompeii. So that just came out of your mouth.
I mean, this is kind of the way my whole spiritual journey has been. I mean, I've always been on it, I think that we're so layered on all these levels of ourselves that we don't really realize who we are for years, because we're not supposed to, but it's all in there, all those memories and all those awakenings are just lying in us dormant, ready to get reopened,
Yeah, and sometimes it takes these events to trigger them, and you're like,
it's always like some big.
It's not always like a good
well,
thing.
When I left Chorus Line, I left Chorus Line because 3 Mile Island happened while we were in the city of Philadelphia, and
it's just following you.
Yeah, and so I said I don't want to die. I mean, it was always about get me safe.
Okay, if anything happens in LA, I'm going with you wherever you're going.
Have your bags ready.
Okay. Oh my gosh,
it's hilarious.
Wow. And so then you worked on all these wonderful things, and you ended up with. Let's talk for a few minutes about the Fast Forward movie with Sidney Poitier. Tell us about that.
I was doing On Your Toes, which was actually my favorite Broadway show because George Abbott was incomparable. He was so legendary. He was 97 years old. I have to mention him because he was a touchstone person for me.
What year was that?
That was 1982.
I think I saw that on Broadway, and this was my very first Broadway show ever.
God.
I had gone to New York for the very first time, and this guy that I was visiting took me to a Broadway show, and it was On Your Toes.
Come on.
I'm not kidding. I was sitting in like maybe second row. We had great seats.
Oh my God, then you saw me for sure.
I saw you.
Yeah, and but George Abbott had seen me. I was doing a season at New York City Opera as a dancer. I was asked to do it because they needed a slot, and I ended up understudying roles in Candide and The Merry Widow. Wow. And I guess who I worked with, Donald Sadler in The Merry Widow, he pulled me aside. He goes, "Do you tap dance?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Would you be interested in letting me take you to lunch? I want to tell you about a project that I'm about to start. And I'd like you to assist me in the audition process of this show called On Your Toes." And do you know who George Abbott is? And of course, I didn't. So he told me who he was. And I did the audition process. And Mr. Abbott saw me and he said, "Who's she? Who's that?" And he goes, "That's my assistant, Tamara Mark." He goes, "Well, she's a star. She's got to be in my show." So I literally didn't I didn't audition. I got the show without auditioning.
He could just tell.
Yeah. And he came back 3 years later when I was living out here after Fast Forward. And he had wanted me to come on the national tour again. And he was like about 99. I think he was 99.
Wow.
And he remembered me and met me after the show and said, "I want you to come out and do this little show in New York called Damn Yankees because they're doing a revival." And he goes, "Oh, they want some actress in New York, but I want you. Because I know you're somebody, and it's time the rest of the world knew it." And so, he kind of had this gruff voice. And they went with someone else, and I know who it is. I'm just not going to say. But it was I lived in LA, and I don't think they wanted to pay a move and so it didn't happen. But anyway, cut to I was in On Your Toes and doing a lot of commercials and starting to study acting in a more serious way. And so I was being sent out on all these things for acting only. So I go in for an audition for this film called Fast Forward, and I walk into the room and Sidney Poitier is sitting there.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like,
you didn't know.
Oh my God, it's Mr. To Sir with Love. I was so mesmerized by him. And Joy Todd did the casting, and Bernie, who was in the film with us, I can't think of his last name right now, but he just passed recently. But they were both sitting there, and I found out later after I got the movie, when I walked out, he said to the casting director, he goes, "I hope she can dance." What a wild ride. Yeah, it was crazy. And he auditioned 7,500 people all over the country for the 8 roles.
Eight roles and 7,500 people.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And when we and what he did, he was such a generous, amazing human being, besides the unbelievably gifted actor and director person that he was. He called us personally on the phone. So I'm in my little apartment down on East 12th Street, and the phone rings, and I pick up the phone. It's before I have to go to the show. And I go, "Who's calling me?" Nobody calls. So
that was before caller ID.
Yeah, that was before caller. So I pick up, and he goes, "Hello, is Tamara Mark there?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, it's Sidney Poitier." And he goes, "I just called to tell you that I want you to be in my film. I hope you'll accept."
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, I was so blown away, and I hung up the phone, and I think I jumped around my apartment for about 10 minutes. And then I thought, I'm not going to tell anybody.
Why?
Because I think there was a part of people that said, have you gotten the film? Have you gotten the film? Because I had screen tested like 6 weeks prior, and I think they just were hoping I hadn't gotten the film.
Oh, yeah, right.
So I thought, I'm just going to carry this with me for a little bit. So I think I went a couple days before I told them, but I went and gave my notice. And then I told a couple of my friends, the word got around. People were like, oh my God, you got to lead in a film. And that's how it happened. And that's how I came to LA.
That's how you came to LA.
Yes.
So let's transition from there to you were in LA and you did the movie, and you're this budding career as an actress on your way up, very successful. And you decide to leave. You decide to stop acting.
Well,
now what happened? What made you decide to leave the business?
Well, it's funny. I didn't really decide to leave. I was studying fervently with Peggy Fury, who was another mentor in my life. She was Sidney Poitier had put a couple of us from the film into that acting class because she was the top acting coach in his mind. He thought she was wonderful. Mm-hmm. So I was studying like 5 days a week with her and really reading plays. And then I started going, when I wasn't reading plays, I'd go to the Bodhi Tree. If you guys remember that bookstore.
I remember the Bodhi Tree.
I used to spend like weekends in there.
Yes.
And I met and found a lot of interesting things that drew me and people. And anyway, this acting teacher that I had died tragically in a car accident. The last day I did my scene, I was doing a scene from Plenty, and we were the last, I think, people to put up our thing that day. And when I walked in the room, Peggy was sitting in the corner, and I looked at my friend Gretchen and I said, Peggy looks different today.
Really?
And she goes, no, she doesn't. What are you talking about? I said, I don't know. She doesn't look like Peggy today.
Huh.
And so I heard, that people leave their body before they leave their body. Like sometimes,
I've never heard that, really.
Yeah, that usually, Edgar Cayce talks about, I think, he was going to get on an elevator and the doors opened and he was about to step in and he couldn't see anybody's aura or he couldn't see any of it. So he didn't get on and that fell. So it was like I looked at it and I thought, well, that's a weird thought to have,
I need to be more aware of that. Oh my goodness.
So she, that day she talked about, she was so fun and silly. There was a gun in one of the scenes and she was like playing and she was saying, I used to want to live to be 103, but now my girls are grown and I think I'm fine with whatever happens. And she was very philosophical and she asked me a lot about, who I identified with more in that role. Was it the Meryl Streep role or the Tracy Ullman? Because the one character was very independent and free-spirited. The other one had been home. And I said, well, I'm a combination of those two people, that one was finding herself and one was really free-spirited. And so after the day was over, we decided to go down the block to have lunch. And she was there with her husband having lunch. They were all flirty and she was probably 65, somewhere around that age. And she and her husband, Bill Traylor, were like all romantic and lovey-dovey. And my friend Gretchen and I are watching her and he's blowing kisses as she's going out she's driving away.
Oh my gosh.
Well, the next day we get a call that she's sick. And I'm like, she's not sick. Like I knew something had happened.
You did.
And 2 days later, they discovered her body, but she was burned beyond recognition.
What?
Yeah, because she had a head-on collision on her way home. But she had narcolepsy, so why she was driving is unusual anyway. But she drove, and she died. And her sudden death, thrust me into searching for a real meaning in my life, because I had kind of hung on to her as this, great mentor and teacher, and she so loved me and so believed in me. And I was really starting to really blossom in my acting. And I thought, gosh, if she can be taken out this fast.
Right.
That's why I always say it's a tragedy sometimes that leads me to that next thing, which is like a weird thing to say. But I think those really moments that shift us, that go so deep into the core of your being, that shift that appendage point, as Carlos Castaneda writes about, it like makes you like when 9/11 happened.
Yeah.
All of us for a while shifted out of what was our day to day into this bigger scope of awareness that we're all interconnected, and why are we really here? And is it really about me? Is it really about my own, fame and money and all that stuff? And I was never doing it for those reasons, because obviously I ended up leaving, and you were asking how I left. How I left was her death propelled me into a search. And in that search, an astrologer followed me around the Bodhi tree for like 8 hours, because I used to spend so much time in there.
Yeah.
And he came up to me and said, "You're such a fascinating person. I want." You don't know me, but he asked to do my chart for free. He goes, "I really want to do your chart." Now, I'd never had a chart done.
Oh, okay.
So when he did it, he goes, "I think you're supposed to meet somebody."
Really?
He goes, "I think you're supposed to come and meet this channel called Mafu, this woman who channels named Penny Torres. You guys in your charts have some sort of karmic thing that you're supposed to."
Really?
Yeah. So I'm like, okay. I mean, I was like a full body channel. What is this?
What do you mean a full body channel?
It meant that, how a lot of people were doing, this was during the time of the Shirley MacLaine, Out on a Limb, all that stuff. And there was Ramtha. Ramtha was a full body channel.
I actually had a channeling session. And so you're meaning someone who is a channel for, they just
entity.
go into a trance and then they...
Yeah, and they actually take over, like what happened with Penny.
Right.
She would go into the death process in the beginning and leave her body, and he actually even defecate and all that. They came to not have that happen.
God.
But literally someone came in, and he called Mafu, who he called himself. He would even, her size, she had to wear bigger pants. I mean, like really, he became
How weird.
it was very unusual.
Yeah.
And so I was very skeptical. I was not, I thought this was, whatever.
Too woo-woo.
Yeah, too woo-woo for me. So I sat there being skeptical, and as she was talking, I'm like rolling my eyes, And then when he started, I was a little bit more curious. Mm-hmm. And then when he did the meditation, it blew my mind. Like I went, oh, there's something to this thing. There's something to this meditating thing that I didn't know.
Really?
Yeah. So I ended up that day, he did $10 things at the hotel that used to be the Holiday Inn right there on Highland and what is that? We're like by the Chinese
Franklin?
Yeah, Highland and Franklin. It's now like the W or whatever it is. Oh. But we would go there for $10, and he'd give talks to like 300-400 people at a time. Uh-huh. And so I had one private interview. I had done an episode of an HBO episode with Dean Paul Martin and Dana Wheeler Nicholson, and I had gotten to be really close with Dean Paul and Dana, and he actually passed away. He flew. I was afraid to fly. He was telling me not to be afraid to fly. And then when I'm with Mafu, he literally flew his jet. I mean, he crashed into a mountain. That's how he died.
Who?
Dean Paul Martin. Dean Martin's son.
Oh, okay. Dean Martin's son.
Yeah, he is an amazing person. But anyway, he was also another trigger for things. But I had left. I was doing all these jobs and working. Mm-hmm. And then Mafu, I went to a private thing with him. And Mafu said, "Why do you think it's wrong for the woman to charge money for this?" And I said, "Because anything that's truly spiritual should be given for free."
Right.
And he looked at me, he goes, "From this point forward, you are exempt from any financial responsibility, and I want you to travel with me."
You're really?
Yeah. So that's how it started. Oh. So I wasn't going to leave my career.
Right.
I was just going to go and do some
check these things out.
And I ended up leaving. I guess I left for about a year or so, but I always, after I go and travel and do it, I always would land in New York. I'd get an agent back, or I'd come back here. My agent still would take me. I was always, I never really left.
Yeah.
I just did things where I was the come and go actress.
The come and go.
But my agents literally cried. They literally looked at me and cried and said, "You have no idea what you're doing."
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, in hindsight, yeah, in terms of my career, it probably wasn't the wisest move, but in terms of my life, it was.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you've had some incredible experiences on that journey, but your most true spiritual experience that you have told me that is your reason, your purpose right now, is your two boys.
That's right.
So we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to introduce the listeners to your boys.
Great.
On the next episode of Sound, Mind, and Body, we talk to CEO and founder of King Tide and young entrepreneur Jordan Rothstein.
My main advice is if you want to be an entrepreneur, you really just can't say no. You can't give up. You will go through hard times. I guarantee it. And especially if you're in your 20s. Your 20s are hard. They're a lot of fun, but especially as an entrepreneur. But I think everyone, that's really where you figure out who you are. And for me, it wasn't even until these past 2 years where I think I've started to understand and love who I am. So, you got to go through those dark times to get to the other end. Just keep going.
That's next week on Sound, Mind, and Body.
Hey, it's Tim Edwards with the Inbound Podcasting Network and producer of Sound, Mind, and Body. Just the fact that you're listening to the Sound, Mind, and Body podcast tells us that you enjoy consuming your content through your ears. Now, if you're a podcast listener, you're a perfect fit to enjoy audiobooks. So for you, our listeners and official members of Sheila's woo-woo community, Audible is offering you a free audiobook download and a free 30-day trial to check out their awesome service. Give it a shot. You've got nothing to lose. It's absolutely free for 30 days, and you get a free audiobook to keep even if you don't continue with the subscription. Support Sound, Mind, and Body by visiting audibletrial.com/inbound. That's audibletrial.com/inbound. We'll include a link in the show notes, or just click the Audible banner at soundmindbodypodcast.com.
Okay, we are back and we're talking to Tamara Mark. So before the break, I said we were going to meet and talk about your boys. But before we do that, let's talk about, you want to talk about why the children are here in the first place. And that ties into your spiritual journey. So let's talk about that.
Okay. After I left the Mafu thing, I did a lot of seeking. I went through Tibetan Buddhism. I went to Yogananda. I went to Guru Mai. I went to Muktananda, who's Guru Mai, that was her guru. I did a lot of soul searching, continued to seek. And we lived, my boyfriend and I at the time, he was a very spiritual guy. He knew about everybody. I mean, he was like 10 years older than me. He'd read everything on the planet. He could not live it, but he knew it. You know what I mean? He was one of those people that was like a walking encyclopedia of knowledge, but couldn't speak it.
He couldn't live it. Yeah.
Couldn't live it. So we lived next door to the SRF and the Self-Realization.
Self-Realization Fellowship, which is in
Pacific.
Is it Pacific Palisades? Yeah.
That's where the Lake Shrine is, but there's, the Mother Center is in atop of Mount Washington.
So that picture of my picture on my website and on my Facebook page is me sitting in the Lake Shrine. I'm in the Lake Shrine. So anyway,
I saw that, actually.
Just a side note.
Well, that's, another synchronistic thing that you and I have. And anyway, we were, I was meditating a lot at this point. I even came on later to meditate longer, but I would go over there every day.
Wow.
And sit in the chapel, in the little windmill chapel. Mm-hmm. And it was convenient. It was
it was gorgeous.
And it was really beautiful, right?
Yeah.
So I would sit there, and this was 1988, 89 probably. But I was meditating a lot. Mm-hmm. And one day in my meditation, I had a waking meditation where my eyes were closed, but it looked like I was looking at you and Tim. And I had, all of a sudden, I see this beautiful man up on a hill facing in profile to the ocean. And his hair was blowing. He's in this white sadra. And I was like, who is that? That is not Yogananda, because Yogananda did not have a nose like that. And he had a very pronounced nose, this person.
Oh, okay.
So about a month later, I'm sitting in my apartment in Pacific Palisades, and I have Channel 3 access on, and all of a sudden I'm hearing the song, I hear Pete Townsend singing, and I see this man in a white sodra with a pink jacket walking across the TV screen. I went, oh my God. I go, that's the guy.
Oh, you're kidding.
And I go, oh my God. And I yell to my boyfriend upstairs. I go, Ted, come down here. That's the guy. He goes, that guy appeared to you? And so he goes upstairs to our book. You know, he had a lot of books on spirituality, and he puts 3 books in front of me, and he goes, meet your master.
You're kidding.
Yeah.
Well, who was it?
It was Meher Baba, and he was Pete Townsend's guru. Pete Townsend wrote a lot of songs, or is Pete Townsend's guru. But yeah.
So Meher Baba, and when you have a beautiful necklace on that actually has a picture of him, right?
Yes.
So when you first came in, Tim was like, who is that on your necklace? And she said, that's Meher Baba. And I said, hey, that guy just followed me on Instagram. 'Cause I did.
And I'm like, oh my God, that guy's following me. I go, and he's not even in a body anymore. You're doing good, girl.
I literally got a follow from that picture, and it said Meher Baba.
Gives me goosebumps.
And I looked at the because I think I remembered the Baba name from you, right? Mm-hmm. And I looked at his profile. I was like, who is this, right? And he only had like 4 posts, and he only had a few followers. So I thought, forget that, right? And I did not follow him back.
I guess Baba had a little message for you from the other side. There are a lot of websites, and a lot of people use his picture as their profile.
But I just think it's funny that he just yesterday. And
Goosebumps.
So I feel like he is following
He is following
us,
you.
know, like that he knew you were going to be here. It's so weird. That is cracking
But we have a lot of these synchronicities. I love it. Well, you know, he calls people. I mean, you don't find him; he finds you.
Okay,
so
when
he found you.
You were called,
mm-hmm.
and you read the books, and what did you do?
I became like a voracious reader of every single thing of being with him, because since I was 3 years old, it'll make me cry. I wanted to be with Jesus.
Oh my gosh, really?
Since I was a kid, I would tell my mom, and dad, Jesus is here, Jesus is here. I go, I've got to go to because in Bible school or whatever, in church, I was taught that Jesus lived in Jerusalem, so I was a little kid. Uh-huh. But Baba was in the body at that time. And Baba dropped his body in 1969.
Oh, really?
And I think on a deep intuitive level,
you were connected.
I was connected from the beginning. It wouldn't be.
Gosh.
I think that we come in with these things and we have to rediscover them in our way, whatever that means to us.
In whatever this lifetime,
lifetime we're working out or deciding to do, or
or meant to do,
That
is incredible.
Yeah. So so the Baba thing. A couple years later, I went to Virginia Beach for a while and studied at the Edgar Cayce, the ARE. Mm-hmm. I studied about, all the different healing modalities and homeopathy. And I was very interested in all the wisdom of his readings, because he healed so many people of so many things going into a trance. And I read a lot about the Ray Stanford readings, which really interested me because they were about Mary and being growing up in Beaverton, Oregon, Portland, as a Lutheran. They don't really focus on the goddess or the Virgin Mary or the Mother of God. So it was really fascinating to me to see that these little kids had apparition visits from Mary. So that was a real draw. And when I came back to LA, I decided that it was time to go back to work. So I came back to Los Angeles, and I started to try to go to the Baba Center in LA, and every time I would go, it'd be locked. So I guess they didn't have they didn't have what they have now in terms of you could look on your phone, like when they're open, when they're not.
Right.
And they had like a phone machine. I mean, it was like the littlest place, because the main Baba Center is in India, and the Mother Center is in this country is in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And then there's places in Australia. There's places all over the world, but there's millions of Baba lovers all over the world. But I didn't know that. So I couldn't get into the center. And when I finally, a friend of mine asked me to go meet two friends of hers that she thought I should meet this woman for tea when they found out I was into Meher Baba. Uh-huh. And the woman that I met, Adele Wolkin was her name, And my friend Deborah Colette actually brought me to them. And when she met me, she looked at Colette and I, Adele, and she was an older woman now. She was probably in her 80s or late 70s at this point. She looks at us, she goes, well, it looks like you two just turned around and came right back. I know you.
Oh my gosh.
So that was a weird first meeting.
Yeah.
And she stayed one of my very deepest Baba connections in LA until her passing. She moved to Myrtle Beach near the end of her life. She lived to be almost 100. She was a brilliant woman, but she served Baba's Mandali, the disciple women of Baba. She left her life in her 20s to and got out of a bad marriage and became helped all the Mandali women. So she had a deep connection with those women, but she recognized something about me, and she told me later that she thought, and even in India, one of Baba's only sister asked me a question. She goes, Tamara, she goes, you have a bit of Nadine Tolstoy. She goes, are you Irish? I'm like, what does that mean? But I guess that Baba had told her that Nadine Tolstoy would come back in another lifetime as an Irish woman, and I'm not Irish, but maybe the characteristics are who knows.
Yeah.
But anyway, I met this Mandali member when he came to LA after Adele. It was like a fast track. All of a sudden, I was meeting all these people. And when I met Bao Kalchuri, he was standing, he had just done a talk. He's a small Indian man who gave a talk in Palos Verdes, and I can just visualize him under the tree standing there. And as I was walking toward him, he started to throw out his arms, and he started kissing the air, like kissing for me and reaching for me, like, and I'm like, whoa. And when I got to him, he completely went into universes and galaxies. I saw no person. It was like,
are you kidding?
I had a complete other kind of worldly exchange or experience with him. And the inner knowing thing went in me and said, you're supposed to hang on to this guy. You hang on tight, because this is the one for you in this lifetime in terms of what I was looking for to help me get closer to Baba. He was really,
wow.
He served Baba since he was in his 20s, and he was of the highest caste Hindu. And anyway, he took me on a pilgrimage to India, and I went to where Baba was born, to his house, where he got God realization, where Baba John's tree, when she kissed him into God realization, the stone where he hid himself to bring himself back into gross consciousness. And I went to Sikori and Shirdi, where two of the perfect masters brought Baba into his realization. I actually went to the three places, Baba Jan, Sai Baba of Shirdi, and Apasni Maharaj. I went to all those places. He took me. I went to and had this experience.
I've never heard of any of this.
So there's always 5 perfect masters on the planet. And they, in the time of the Avatar, always. In the time of the Avatar, they go by sort of not, after the Avatar's been here, like Baba, this manifestation. They're here, but they work silently. They're not the ones that are out in the front getting like the accolades for being miracles or they're doing their work because it's already been done. They're doing it more in the unseen realms. They're working probably in other ways, and people probably meet them wherever they are in India, or people meet them. But anyway, it was a remarkable. I mean, there's so many stories of my times in India. I went 2 times.
Well, that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah. And when I went the second time, his sister was passing. Now, I had a really close connection with Meher Baba's only sister, who was born 25 years after when he was already God realized, after his birth. He held her. He was the first person to hold her, and he said, "This is the luckiest soul in the universe."
Oh my gosh!
So she served Baba as like God. Like she has books called God Brother, and it's incredible lives all these people lived. But they took me under their wing. I had intimate moments in India. I spent 6 weeks at a time in 93 and 96, and I was there before, during, and after Mani's passing. And at Mani's passing, the day before, I was sitting in Baba's room and meditating, and I never had done that before. And I went so far inward that I got so quiet that everybody thought there was something wrong with me.
Really?
Because I went into like another thing. And it turns out I was sitting right next to the wall where she was transitioning.
Oh my goodness.
And I didn't know that her bed was right next to Baba's wall like that. And the next day she passed. And I stayed for a couple of weeks after that. I could write a book about just my times in India, but when I got back from India, I went into kind of a depression, I think, because I didn't think I realized how close I was to her.
Yeah.
And her passing awakened something very profound in me, as Bauji had. And 2 years later, I met my husband, my then husband, who was to be my husband. And he was an actor and a musician and a writer, director, extremely dashingly good looking and charismatic. And he was spiritual at the time, you know? And it was fast and furious. And Bauji had come to my apartment on a silence day. We all take silence on July 10th.
That is...
Is there another synchronicity?
Well, yeah, that's okay. One of my very good friends who passed away 8 years ago, Ronnie James Dio, and it's the Cancer Fund that I'm involved with.
Oh my gosh.
His birthday is July 10th.
Goosebumps.
I didn't know that was a special day.
Yeah,
wow.
It's actually the day that all Meher Baba lovers all over the world take silence in honor of, because Baba took silence, went in speaking on July 9th, I think it was 1925. I should know this. But anyway, he came out and never spoke again for 44 years. He kept silent. So he was like the silent master. He didn't speak for 44 years. So anyway, that's how that happened. And anyway, then I fast and furiously was on Silence Day in my apartment, and we're sitting there, and I had a song on. All of a sudden, Bauji pops up out of his chair and goes to a blank wall and goes like this, like into reverence, and there was nothing there. So I thought, oh, Bob is here. Oh. So we all turned and just sort of in silence were standing there, and then he came over to me and hugged me so hard. He had never held me like that. So I knew that something was told to him about me and what I was going to do. And I got pregnant.
Wow. Okay. So you feel that they knew that by getting pregnant, you know, what these souls that were coming in through you were going to be your true spiritual journey.
Yeah, my teachers.
So you have 2 boys.
Yes.
And how far apart are they?
They are 33 months apart.
Wow. And so when did you realize your first son was autistic?
We had gone to Europe. We'd gone through France and Italy and returned, and Ian was just turning 1. It was right before his first birthday. I had a big birthday. And we lived at the top of Mount Washington, which is 3 doors down from the other mother center of Yogananda. So I've lived next door to Yogananda 2 times in this life.
Wow.
And so I had a big party for Ian, and I had taken him to the doctor and the pediatrician and I think he had a little cold. And I was going to wait, and he said, "Oh, you should give him these shots because you're gonna have to pay more if you don't do it now." I mean, he had like a reason. So
the regular vaccinations.
Yeah, it was the MMR. Actually, it was the measles, mumps, rubella. So I begrudgingly did it, and I noticed by like the next day, he seemed to be stressed or not sleeping, and he wasn't the same. And he stopped talking. He was having words. He went silent. He stopped calling. If you called his name, he wouldn't respond. He became very unresponsive.
And before that, he was completely
normal. He was completely born neurotypical. Everything about him was fine. And it was, I didn't want to believe it. I went and got it. They got his ears tested. The doctor had said, "Go get his ears tested." And I think he's gone deaf. And we went through this whole journey of, testing, and I was just frantically trying Lorenzo's oil, trying to, find that way to get him back, just touch him again. Like, it's horrible.
I'm so sorry.
So horrible.
It's just like that you have personally experienced this, I mean, I don't want to get into the whole vaccine thing.
No.
But this is something that you have personally experienced.
Yes.
And
they deny, and people
it.
still deny unless they've lived it. And how Harry,
and then
Harry comes in, and he's fine.
He's fine.
And even my OBGYN, she goes, when she found out the boys had autism, she goes, "Not my babies. They were born absolutely perfect. There was nothing wrong." And I waited 15 months and did not give Harry a shot.
Yeah.
Because I knew that there was
a tendency.
Yeah,
maybe.
a tendency. And I really at that time only thought the MMR was dangerous because Ian had his other shots. Mm-hmm. And so my then new pediatrician, because I moved to Pasadena, had said, if you don't start his thing, you're not a good mom. And she
like
showed
fear.
me fear. And so I just buckled and I gave what I thought was a safe vaccine. And it turns out it was one of the worst. It was the Hep B, which they actually give to babies at 4 hours old.
Oh my God.
Which is absolutely insanity and why we have an autism epidemic. But that's another story. But the thing that happened then after that Harry, who was completely fine and developing typically, was gone.
Oh God.
So it not only happened once, it happened twice.
I personally, my son had a vaccine reaction when he was 2 months old. They give him these vaccines. They're just tiny little, pure little babies.
Developing an immune system on their own.
And I didn't even realize it until almost 10 years later. It was a long time before I went, oh my God. He went to the hospital. He was having seizures, spent overnight, did all this, nothing. They said it was nothing. And then he ended up okay. Thank God.
Thank God.
But he slept with a monitor I still, when he was like 12, I was still checking if he's breathing, I
do that with Ian because he has seizure disorder.
Yeah.
It's
and
horrible.
it's like, I'm sorry, but vaccines can be different for every single human body.
Yes,
you can't,
that's right.
You
Not a
can't
one size
generalize
fits all.
it. Yeah. So this is where you find,
This is where the real spiritual journey began because I think a lot of all the woo-woo stuff and the amazing things that I've done in Peru and the weird experience, all those things that happened, people appearing to me, deities and stuff, gave me a foundation of faith.
To live through this.
Yeah.
And to actually embrace it.
Yeah.
And you told me one time when we were talking, and that's why I wanted to have you on. You said, I look at it like a Zen, like it's a Zen.
Yeah.
And tell us about that, how you deal with this with a Zen attitude.
Well, I'm a single mom now, and I have 2 boys that will, for the rest of their life, require 24/7 care.
Yeah.
And I always get emotional talking about it. And, they're the most beautiful teachers because what they've taught me by me having to persevere through so much suffering and not lose my faith and my conviction that there's purposeful good in everything that happens, even the most tragic, horrible things, that we live through in life.
Yeah.
There is purposeful good in it because we're in Earth School, or it's all illusion, really. I mean, we're just playing out our particular part in this lifetime. And I have learned through being with them how to be moment to moment and how to be more flexible, how to be more patient, how to not have expectation.
Yeah, well, you post a lot on your Facebook page, stories.
Yes.
And so that people can understand what goes on in your household, in your life, in your day-to-day life.
Yes.
And they're always like little lessons and magical to me. I'm not kidding. I'm just like, oh my God, I just send you love every time. But what can people that are not involved with an autistic family member or loved one, how can we help you? How can we help?
I think what was needed is that because autism is a silent tsunami, I like to call it, it's coming over, and these kids are aging out of a system at age 22 or living in an environment of a lot of hostility and lack of patience or care for our human beings, our human fellow of man. We are in a time where there's so much separation that I find that what's needed is a future for all this population because there isn't one. Right. If the parents are gone or their caregivers are gone, they would be institutionalized, and there's not even enough institutions. And it's a tragedy because they're these brilliant souls and they're so full of love and light, and people are frightened of things they don't know. And I think the more that people are made aware of the beauty of who these beings are, I mean, they're really full of pure love.
Super sensitive.
And so sensitive, so tuned in. I know that my kids can see things I can't see.
Right.
I know they experience. I'm a very tuned in person to people's feelings, but they're 1,000 times more than me. But I've become so much more intuitive because they're nonverbal. They don't talk.
Yeah.
So it's made me develop a skill, I guess, to get better at, because I don't have a way to, like right now, Harry wouldn't leave the house for 3 months. He was, stressing, so anxious. He was trembling, and he would only be with me, and he'd put everybody in rooms, and he couldn't leave. He couldn't go from point A to point B for hours. Like he just was so anxious. And I had been praying and meditating, like, what am I missing? I'm missing something. So I took my friend Colette for her birthday to Yogananda's tomb. He's buried in Glendale.
Oh, he is?
Entombed there in the mausoleum, the Golden Slumber. And I sat there and I just said, Baba, I'm here sitting with Yogananda for some help, because I've done everything I can for 3 months, and I need to know why Harry's acting like this. So 2 days later, I'm standing as the girls are putting together the CBD oil, because my kids take CBD oil for seizures and behaviors. And they were filling up. They go, well, we're out of the THC. And I said, well, I'm going to lessen it on Harry. Ian's not on it. And it turned out they were putting such a high dosage of THC. They were putting the CBD dosage into his THC. So he was being overdosed. He was being doubly dosed with this stuff. And I went, thank you, Baba.
Oh my gosh.
Like that's what it was.
You're kidding.
So I literally in the last week have seen a complete turnaround of Harry coming back to being more calm.
It's so super sensitive.
Oh my God.
And
it was 3 months of pure hell.
And so every day they have caretakers,
Yes.
and now they go to exercise at this place.
They go on Sundays. They go to a program called Special Fit that's led by Mike Ramirez, and they have a big place out in Chatsworth. I think he just opened his own thing, but on Sundays they come to Pasadena, and it's just a 30-minute training, but it helps them on so many levels with their anxiety, with their focus, with their organization. And it was a very challenging thing in the beginning for them to stay in a gym. I mean, to even enter a gym, especially for Harry. So it's been one of the greatest things that they've been doing, besides learning to type so that we can find out what's going on and all the nature. I mean, they are really attached to nature and quietude, and that's really important for them.
So what can people do? Like you're advocating in their schools.
Yes.
Tell me
the community.
In the community.
And on Facebook.
And on Facebook. And how, because we were talking about this before when we were at a friend's birthday party recently, about how other parents, you're trying to help other parents
yes.
who have an autistic child, not be hopeless.
Yeah. I had a friend recently private message me and say, can you meet with me? Because my son's having a lot of the same challenges your son is. And I want to know how you keep persevering and have the peace you have, and how you do it with the joy that you do. Because a lot of times it breaks people.
Yeah.
Because trust me, it broke me. I mean, between a bad marriage with a very abusive person to having these kids and not having any family, and losing my parents and all these things, you have to draw from something else.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that wellspring or that depth of that foundation, I understand why people can't have their children or don't have patience, because I worked a long time to have this patience. I traveled a long journey of spiritual awakening that is still every day, hopefully growing and hopefully evolving. And I thank my children and Baba for it, because I think that's why it is, because they make me a better person. They make me outside myself. They make me, they make me, I'm here for service now. It's really, I'm just here to serve.
And you have, I'm sorry, but I get emotional, but you have so many wonderful people around you too, all their aides.
Yes.
it seems like they're so giving and so kind and so, it's just there's all these people that are dealing with this all over the world.
Yeah, and it really takes a village. And even when we have it in our homes, the help that I have, and I have an enormous amount of help that, because I've advocated well, and I try to help other people to get those things as well. But the truth of the matter is it's still not enough help.
It's not enough.
No. And most of my friends that have one child with autism, and some not as severe as mine, some maybe as severe as mine, maybe some even harder, they usually only have one at that level of what I'm dealing with. And my two are the antithesis of each other. One is very social, one is very non-social, one is very strong and aggressive, the other's very doesn't want to be touched, the other needs a lot of deep pressure. I mean, they cannot be on the opposite ends. They're like completely two. So that's why I always say when you've met someone with autism, you've met one person with autism. It's like not a one size fits all either. Yeah. And autism is such a huge umbrella. And so I think the way people can help is to create more, get more awareness and stay out of judgment. When you see a child melting down in a grocery store and you think, oh, that parent is a horrible parent, take another look. How is that child? Does it seem like a typical response? Is the child talking? Right. Is the child, you just have to go a little deeper in yourself, but it forces a person. I've had people say that to me, that from your posts, I look at things differently now when I'm out in public. I don't judge it in the same way. So I feel like, oh, thank you, I'm doing my job. If it reaches one person, and one person is kinder to, an individual with autism, it's a great day.
Well, that's why I wanted to have you on, because I wanted thousands of people to hear this story. And you're trying to advocate to build that place where they can live as adults.
Yes.
And, where are you at with that, and what would you need to help move that forward?
I think that the most important thing is the land. We've got to find a place that's affordable. We have to create affordable housing for families and adults with different abilities. I think nonverbal autism is my focus because it's an enormous population and we have the hardest lives.
Right.
And so many of the people are really suffering. The parents are exhausted. We've gone through all our finances. We're hanging on some days, by a thread.
Yeah.
So if I can do anything to service that, I know there's other people around the country that are now building these things, but they're very expensive. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, with all the things being cut and things being taken away, I always say that it's going to happen because it's got to happen.
It has to.
Yeah. It's just, so I go forward as if I've seen it, like how we did with Andrea.
Right.
It's my vision. It's been my vision to live in a community since I was 17. I saw it when I was 17. I just didn't know it was going to have autism in it.
Right.
So I know it's going to happen. I know what it looks like. I know what I can do. I know the people that are going to want to come. And every day I feel like seeing you, being here today, I feel like I keep meeting people that are going to want to live and work and be part of this, because it's going to be where we're going to all have to go eventually, right. Our communities, because there's the work and the workplace and the land, and we all got to get back to it and help each other. We have to help each other.
I love that. And I will do what I can. And you're also working with Catherine Curry Williams.
Yes, I am.
Who has an organization called Shane's Inspiration, where they build playgrounds. All-inclusive playgrounds. And that's because she had a child that, died as a baby. Shane.
Old. Yeah, Shane.
And so they built that, and she's
out of their grief.
Yes,
they spearheaded
out of their grief.
This beautiful thing that's all over the world, and they're educating, and that was the first parks that my kids felt welcomed at, and that they could play in the Griffith Park one.
So
before I knew them, she and Scott.
Well, is there anywhere we can keep in touch with how things are going with you and on this project, and
Yes, I mean, my Facebook page, and I do have a musings. I have an autism awakening. I have an autism page called, I think it's called Aut Mom, Musings of Awakenings of an Aut Mom. I forget it. Anyway, I haven't been on it in so long. Awakenings. Musings of an Aunt Mom or something. But I need to start writing where I've just been going through a lot of stuff. So I haven't been on that page too much. I mostly go to my Facebook thing, and I love to share about it. If people want to know more.
Yeah, you have magical things happen every, like you share the struggle, but then there's always this beautiful moment that happens.
Yeah, there's always a blessing.
Yeah.
Or there's some kind of thing that makes me go into gratitude. And the more I can stay in gratitude and appreciation for just being alive, I can go through it. I mean, some days are really tough, but you just go deeper. It just makes you go down deeper.
Well, Tamara, this has been an amazing, I can, we could talk to you for hours and hours. And you've had an incredible life. And I usually ask my guests these questions. So are you up for answering those personal questions?
I'll see what comes in. Hopefully I can think of something.
How do you, through all this struggle, how do you stay of sound mind and body? How do you keep yourself looking gorgeous and staying healthy? And how do you do that?
Wow. That's a very kind thing to say. I think for me, I go inward every day, and I first start my day saying thank you, and then I think about how can I help today.
Yeah.
And that's really how I do it. And if I can squeeze out some time, Harry broke my toe by accident about 4 months ago, and I haven't been able to work out. So thank you for saying I'm in shape. But I would love to be dancing and doing some things for me. But I've had so much on my plate being a single mom of two. It's I don't even see friends. It's really hard. And once in a blue moon, I have, Minda and the writing group. Thanks to her, she brought me to Andrea. She's been such an enormous advocate. And that group of women have been a support system to me. They helped me leave my marriage. They supported me through all that. And
that's another story. Yeah. I can't even imagine doing this alone.
Yeah. So it was, it's been... I don't know where I was going with this, but anyway, that's what I do. And I'm hoping to get more into being able to have more friends over to the house. Because when I left Andrea, I said in my snippet that I'm going to start where I live. Oh. And that's what I did. I've restored my entire 104-year-old house.
Oh, cool.
And created a sanctuary of beauty and light and love and joy.
Yes, that's right. I remember.
Because a lot of pain happened there.
Oh my gosh.
So now it's like a completely different
energy
environment. People walk in and go, wow, I feel so peaceful in here. And I'm like, well, you just weren't here 2 minutes ago when Harry was pounding the wall, but or Ian was jumping on the bed or whatever,
Well, when I see pictures of the boys, they're gorgeous and they're smiling all the time.
Yeah, they're beautifully loving, kind people.
What's a favorite sound?
I thought about this morning because there's so many, right? I really love chimes, in the wind. They remind me. They're like
of the other realms we can't see.
Yeah, the other realms we can't see. And the other, I would say, is just the silence in my house, when the sound of silence when we're all there and it's so peaceful. It's like we will sometimes, the boys and I will be in our household, and because they don't talk, they make a lot of sounds. But I know a lot of times when I'm there with them, they're quiet and I'm quiet and I have nothing on, no TV, no sound.
Yeah.
And that sound of peace, it's the sound of silence. It's beautiful.
Wonderful. It's precious.
Yeah.
Okay, so favorite memory?
Wow. I have a lot of them. I would say my wedding day.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Where'd you get married?
At the Bob Center in LA.
Okay.
And it was all for love.
Yes. Beautiful. Well, I want to see pictures.
And I was pregnant with Ian, so
my gosh.
It was sort of a double, I never thought I was going to get married or have kids.
Yeah. And you're entering into
and look
this.
at this.
Yeah, wow.
Look what I got. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
The real job just came in,
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so a favorite place?
I would have to say Baba Samadhi in India. I think that's probably where the ocean of love is. It's just, it's beyond words. changed my life.
Would you ever be able to take your boys there, do you think?
I hope to. I mean, my intention is to bring them there one day. They'd have to be able to travel a great distance. It's a lot different now than when I traveled there. It was much more rural. Everything's just grown so fast, but yeah.
Wow. That would be...
I think Bob is so close with them all the time, you know. I don't think they have to go anywhere.
Yeah, that's true. They don't have to go there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you've been talking about your entire life as a woo-woo thing.
Yeah.
But what is the most woo-woo thing you've ever done? The most woo-woo thing you've ever done?
Oh, God, this is a story. I walked with someone on the fifth plane of consciousness. He took me on in India. And I had been introduced to him. He lives in Marabad, where we would stay, the pilgrims would stay in India. And he is like on the fifth plane, but he's like a child, but he has to be watched. It's like you can't feed him. You shouldn't go near him. He knows the fifth plane where he knows all thoughts of all beings and all universes simultaneously, and yet he needs to be taken care of 24/7.
So who is it a person in physical body?
Yeah, he was in a physical body, yeah. And I had a draw to him before I went to India the first time, and all of a sudden his pictures started like calling me. And so Bauji, when we got to India, he took me to meet him because he lived on the land where we would stay. But he has a caregiver with him at all times because for his safety and people's safety and because he had to be watched. And he does very unusual things. So it's sort of like autism, but way higher. I mean, it's in a whole other realm. But on the last day of my being in India the first time in 93, he beckoned me to the porch, and he was with his Hindi caregiver woman. And she said in broken English, he wants to walk with you.
Oh, my God.
So he took my hand, and we were walking on a porch in different patterning. Like he'd go forward, and then he'd stop, and then he'd go back, then he'd go over here. I mean, it was just like in all these geometric ways of walking. And she turned to me, and she goes, he's walking you through the stations. Now, I didn't really know what that meant. I still don't really know what he did. But anyway, we crossed over Mandali Hall, the original old Mandali Hall, and he sneezed. And he had all this mucus. And, you know, in India, if you're right-handed, they always use the left hand for anything, you know. So I was holding his left hand because, right hand. So in my thought, I said, hold my hand. I know it's a blessing. And he literally did like a double take at me, and looked at me, and he bent down to the bare floor, and out of it, he had her wipe the hand first, and then he bent down to the floor, and he brought up and put it in my hand a dried marigold flower. And the day before that happened, I had been up at the Samadhi with Baba's sister Mani, who was still alive. This is 93. And she looked at me and she said, Tamara, she goes, do you know Baba's favorite flower? And I said, no. She goes, the marigold.
Oh, my gosh.
The marigold, because it keeps away insects. So I have this dried marigold, but he walked me on the other side, and then he was done. And he went back to his bed, back to the room where he was, and she goes, he's done. And I'm like, and then I could barely walk. Like my whole right side was like almost paralyzed. And I thought, well, I'm walking up to that Samadhi maybe for that last time, because I'm either going to die or he gave me something.
Oh, my God. Wow.
Yeah. So that's my most woo-woo. I've had a lot of other woo-woos, though. I mean, 1 million.
I bet. Well, you've told us a few here. I mean, you have had the most incredible, but talking to you tomorrow makes me think of my life differently.
Really?
That's all I can say.
Thank you.
It does.
Wow.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, I guess Baba did call you.
He did. Yeah. He followed me on Instagram.
He did. He's following you on Instagram. God, you are one lucky gal. I am just so want to say thank you from the depth of my being for thinking of me for this. It's been it's given me something I can't even tell you, to be able to express my life in this journey about how it got to where it is today. It's just it was such a gift you gave me. Thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing it.
And you're amazing.
You're helping a lot of people. And I hope to get this out there and help spread the word to a lot of people.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for this episode. And I don't even know what to say here because it is my privilege to interview this amazing woman, Tamara Mark, and to be uplifted by her faith and her view of the world. So thank you again. And I want to thank everybody for listening. You can hear me do my clothes while I cry. And please subscribe if you haven't already. And if you can do that on our website under the subscribe tab. So you just select your favorite listening platform and subscribe to get notified of new episodes right away. And while you're at it, you can join our woo-woo community. Just enter your email on the homepage of our website and you'll start to receive an email every Monday with the latest episode, along with special announcements and other news. And I do have some things planned, and so sign up now and be a part of it. And if you like the podcast, we would really appreciate if you could give us a review on iTunes. It helps new listeners find us, and we need to spread the word. Thank you to our producer, Tim Edwards, and the Inbound Podcasting Network for 1 year. One year. Thank you.
That is incredible.
And we are continuing on. And thank you so much to our beautiful guest, Tamara Mark. Get in touch and join the conversation. We're on Instagram at Sound Mind Body Podcast, or find us on Facebook, YouTube, or the web. Search for Sound Mind Body Podcast. I'm Sheila Melody. Join us next week as we explore, enlighten, and evolve.